Total Sports 2.0. Today we'll be talking about all the hottest movies and documentaries on Netflix. So we have our man in Moscow, Alan Moore.
Hey, Alex.
Hello. And we have our man in Siberia, Mr. Andrew Flint. How are you?
Not bad, Alex. How are you?
I'm fantastic. So without further ado, let's get right into some of the best movies. So I'm going to start off with my favorite movie. So, my favorite sports movie that I think you guys should watch. So that is, I've mentioned this about a year ago on the show, but Bleed for This with Miles Teller, maybe one of the best boxing movies I've ever seen. Now, it's unlike any other boxing movie, which is why I'd like to talk about it, because when the main character fights, you don't really know if he's going to win or what's going to be the results of the fight, which is, and all these movies, like I said, Rocky before, but in Rocky, Rocky's going to win. But in this movie, you never really know. So it's the story of Vinny Pazienza, who was a champion at his time, and he suffered a neck injury. So he had to come back into the world of boxing and eventually take on Roberto Duran, who is one of the best boxers ever. So, Alan, what say you?
Yeah, I remember I watched, of course, the Tasmanian Devil, Pazienza fight. I'm never a huge fan of his. He kind of caught Duran when Duran was already kind of shop worn. But at the same time, he was a very impressive fighter. There was a lot of very good fighters around that time in that division, actually throughout boxing in the 90s, the 80s, early 90s. I saw the movie. It was a tough one because I preferred, and I've just blanked the name. I'll remember in a moment. There was one about the guy in Boston who his brother was played by Batman. What do you call him? The Batman guy.
Ben Affleck.
No, the other guy who loses all his weight and gets fat.
Christian Bale, right?
Christian Bale, yeah. So I remember
That's not the same movie. That's not the same movie.
I know. What a description. I know that. I'm just saying as an alternative. So I'm blanked. He fought in England. I saw him fight in England as well. But he's an American guy who's kind of up and down. His brother's a drug addict and so on. The Bleed for This, Pazienza, he was never kind of a really likable character in many ways. He was kind of rough around the edges. But he was impressive. The movie's good in itself. It wouldn't be my top boxing movie. I still go with Rocky IV, but I would I'm telling you, Rocky IV is everything.
Man, I tried.
Rocky IV has a great soundtrack. Rocky IV has drugs, it has love, it has death. It has man love. It has everything. And it also has Brigitte Nielsen, which is at her finest. So
I can't argue with that.
So I'm okay. Bleed for This. Yeah, great movie. Lots of fun. But it's not my top movie, but it's definitely, I would agree, it's one definitely worth watching.
All right. Andrew?
At the moment, everybody's watching a whole ton of movies. I'm actually going back watching films that I've watched, 10, 15 years ago. And there's one that I did mention on a previous show briefly, but it's I find it absolutely fascinating, called In the Hands of the Gods, where it's a group of freestyling footballers, and they all of them have challenging lives in the UK. And they all meet up and they say, look, their idol is Diego Maradona, and they want to meet him, but they don't have the money to do so, which I actually later, when I became more cynical, found rather amusing, because they have an entire film crew following them and an old production company, which probably could just say, well, here's the tickets, there you go. But anyway, let's ignore the fact that cameras are following them. And they start in New York, they travel through the States, and they have to make their way to Buenos Aires. And they do these unbelievable football freestyling busking on the street shows. And they have to hustle their way into bigger venues where they can, they come on the pitch at half time in an MLS game. And, two of them simply fall by the wayside because they don't quite have that fighting spirit to think, I've just got to keep on working. I've got to keep doing another 3 or 4 shows to raise money. But two of them eventually, was it three of them, in fact, I think, they actually do make it to his house, and they get him a TV show in Argentina begging Maradona to let them meet him. And eventually at the end, they do. And it's, it's a bit reality TV-esque, but they show you how football is received, how people on the street love it, all the way through Latin America, and they meet their idol.
All that right. All they need to do is just buy a big bag of cocaine.
The Colombian exchange.
I think by the looks of the faces of one of the guys, I think he'd already had it, so there wasn't any left for Diego.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so what's the movie called?
In the Hands of the Gods.
Right.
A play on every Englishman's worst nightmare.
And is this on Netflix?
Actually, I hadn't checked if it was specifically on Netflix. I should have done that. It's quite old. It's about 20 years old, 15, 20 years old. So possibly a bit niche for Netflix.
Well, In the Hands of God has my vote this week for the best. Well, the alternative being Rocky 4, which I'll never vote for. But yeah.
Alex, have you seen the movie Slapshot?
No, I have not. Is it about the goalie who makes the mask?
No, that's
no.
that's the Frenchy guy. What do you call him? That's the forward. I know the guy. Oh God, yeah. No. Slapshot is Paul Newman, and it's like the triplets, the Olsen, not the Olsen twins. That's something different. It's the triplet guys, the Hanson brothers, and it's basically a failing minor league hockey team, the Charlestown Chiefs, and it's just to use brutality to fill the arena, and it's one of those fun. It's hilariously funny. There's this guy called Ogie Ogilson. He's like Canadian. He was deported from Canada to go to America to play hockey in Canada because he was so violent. He was deported from America back to Canada, and Canada refused to accept him. So it's like it's that kind of movie. It's
quite like the Goon movies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, we all know the genre.
Goon is actually.
Have you seen the second Goon where they had Stephen Amell as like the even goonier Goon?
Look,
right.
The first Goon movie's fun, and it's on Netflix as well.
Yeah, right. They are. The Goon movies are on Netflix. So for all you Netflix subscribers out there, there's always that. And on that note, gentlemen, documentaries. So I actually have a very good one this week. So it's going to be on Netflix April 20th. So that's going to be in about a week, and it is called The Last Dance, and it is about the most iconic basketball team ever, the 90s Bulls, Michael Jordan. So this is great. Well, it's going to have all the footage from the playoffs, like in the locker room, like all the drama that's going on, because, they had Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, all these guys who always, like to give the piece of their mind. So, and that's also great for anybody who wasn't really old enough to, or didn't really grow up at that time and to watch Michael Jordan play. For all the, I'm always going to be a LeBron fan because I haven't really seen Kobe or Michael play. So, there's that, The Last Dance, coming out on Netflix.
And is it a multi-part series, Alex?
Yes, it's going to be, there's going to be one season, and it's just going to be footage from those games. And, for any basketball fan, this is obviously a must see. So I'm very excited for this.
No, that's terrific, because I think these like the Fly in the Wall documentaries are very, very good. And in fairness, even though they're done quite well in Europe, they're done quite well by British or Irish. In North America, they do them so much better because the media cameras are in the dressing rooms, which right. Baffles me. Where in NHL, NBA, NFL, reporters go into the changing rooms after the game. I mean,
they do.
That could and I mean, it leads to all sorts of like some strange incidents. Like, but for me, I just don't understand that, how a journalist goes into a dressing room, there's all these like naked athletes walking around. Unless it's like, well, I'm going to say, unless it's women's sport, that sounds really, no. I mean, right. It's just like, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So this sounds good. Like, what's the kind of like the has there any clips played for it or any sort of like promos on it, Alex?
Yeah, I've seen the promo, and obviously like they have interviews with people, including like Steve Kerr, who's obviously like the coach of the Golden State Warriors right now. He played for that team. There's like all these guys. Everybody says what they think, and it was also in the '90s, and early 2000s actually. The NBA it kind of had its own like attitude era of like of sort of what they had in the WWF translated in the NBA, because it was sort of like the Wild West. It was like you had people fighting fans, you had referees fighting players, like all this stuff. And it's like I'd like to hear what the thoughts that were going through their heads as they're about to capture their like third, fourth championships. So what's your documentary, Alan?
That's a good one. I mean, I'm gonna check that out. If it's here in Russia, I will check it out. There's a few documentaries. Okay, just on Netflix alone, there's a few documentaries out
right
are very, very good. There's one on cycling with Team Movistar, which is The Perfect Day, I think it is, but it's a bit odd. The one Sunderland Till I Die is very, very good, but you'd need to be.
I tried watching that about a couple of days ago. Well, I mean, I started it. It's a work in progress because I wanted to sort of relate. I wanted to understand what you guys are talking about when you talk. So I was trying to watch that. But yeah, it does look pretty interesting. It is a good documentary.
It's a tough one to follow. It's kind of like you see a whole city and it's based around sport. It is a good one. One that it's not. The Team Movistar one is very, very good. Just because it's so insane and like nothing ever comes about drugs. It's just like kind of they win the Giro d'Italia, and so it's a bit sanitized, but still it's good. It's good to watch it and what goes on behind it, and kind of you don't feel anything for it. Like it's not like you don't feel interested. It's just kind of interesting to see what's going on behind the scenes in the cycling team. The Formula One Drive for Glory is quite interesting as well, but the one that isn't on Netflix that it was actually you and Peter P put me onto was Dark Side of the Ring, the wrestling one. Last week, part 2 of the Chris Benoit story was on.
Oh, right.
Oh my God. I mean, it had everything from all like steroid abuse, for example. It was an amazing when Chris Benoit, of course, because Chris Benoit, the very famous wrestler, was always said that he was too small for wrestling, but became quite strong and worked his way up and was a terrific wrestler. I thought he was a great wrestler myself. He murdered his wife and his youngest child. I think committed suicide, but it was just, you need to watch it to see how it all played out. But WWF then, they were taping, I think, the next day after this came out, and decided that they would put a kind of a tribute out to him. So everyone coming on, some people in tears, and would go like, we miss you, we love you, our thoughts are with you. William Regal. This was and then it was.
Oh right, the Lord. Like
Lord William. And when he was brilliant, and he just stood there, and he was like the ultimate heel. Everyone hated him, and he turned around and went like, so I forget what it was. I'll have to look and see exactly what he said. I'll find a clip and play it in a few minutes, because it was like he was like, there's more to this story than meets the eye. Kind of, he's not the guy you think he is. And then afterwards, people realized he lived in the same town as Chris Benoit. Knew what Chris Benoit was like, that he was like violent, like doper. He was an alcoholic. He was totally messed up. Dark Side of the Ring, for me, not everyone of it's the second season now, but it's so good. It opened my eyes to what's going on. So Dark Side of the Ring as a great documentary series on Vice Sports.
Vice Sports, right? No, it's actually I heard the phone call, Eddie Guerrero, who was like another wrestler. He was it was Eddie Guerrero's younger brother. I forgot his name, but he was Chris Benoit's like best friend. And he was talking about the phone call that when he heard about what happened with Chris, and it was just like the way he tells it is just chilling. All right, now, Andrew, this is your time. Sell us on your best documentary.
um, yeah, well, I won't go. I'll bring a slightly different tone, I guess. For me, when it comes to sport documentaries, and it's hard to pick one when it's about a bunch of players, a team that is so well known and still be original. And I'm not saying it necessarily is the cutting insight that nobody's ever heard, but for me, I'm a Manchester United fan, as you all know, and the class of '92 I absolutely loved, not because it told me anything new about the information behind the players, but just seeing the 6 great Manchester United players sitting around a table together. I know it sounds really basic, but it's literally that part alone that I love about it. The footage of Manchester United in the 1990s has been seen by billions and billions of people. So it's not the new content. It's not the unsides. It's not the unseen side that gives you a whole new perspective. But when you've got David Beckham, who's a global superstar, who goes across any sport, everybody knows him. And then you see somebody like, for example, Nicky Butt, who is a very unglamorous footballer, and he still plays a big part at Manchester United. He runs the academy sides, and yet almost nothing is known about his private life. How they interacted together, for me, is fascinating. You imagine David Beckham as the superstar, but and he is very comfortable in front of the camera, which is not much of a surprise. But Nicky Butt was the leader of the team then, and he wasn't the best player, but they looked to him. And they talk about the Champions League final where Roy Keane was suspended, Paul Scholes was suspended for the biggest game in their club career, and Nicky Butt comes into the team, and they all said, we were looking to Nicky to sort us out. He was the guy who looked after us when we were kids. And that sort of interaction for me was something that it has to be natural or it doesn't work at all. You can't do a documentary on that itself, but it naturally happened. And I thought that alone was great. I love that.
Now, is this a series or is it a movie?
It's sort of a documentary film, really. It was a one-off, feature length, but it was about 7-8 years ago, I think it was, when it came out. I wish it was a series. I'd like to see them, how they, behind the scenes, how they were friends together. It's not the sport we already know about, but how they interacted together for me was the key part.
Okay, so what's the name of the documentary and where can we find it?
It's called The Class of '92. Unfortunately, it's not on Netflix. Next time I will stick to Netflix, I think, to make it easier to access. But it is, I think you can. I'm not entirely sure where to get it from, if I'm being brutally honest. But it certainly was out in the UK. Across the world, I'm not so sure though.
I think it might actually be on Netflix, or maybe that's about '92. There's one called '92 as well for the Danish football team.
Yes, there is the Danish one. Yes.
Yeah, when they won the European Championship.
I haven't seen it on Netflix, but I've seen it on a streaming service somewhere. It might be Amazon Prime, I think.
Okay. Alex, can I play for you the clip from William Regal? I just found it right now. Would that be okay?
I would love that.
Okay,
yes.
So this is it, folks. This is William Regal remembering Chris Benoit. This is on the Raw tribute, Raw as in the WWE tribute for Chris Benoit, which they pulled when they found out what had happened. So here's William Regal, one of the ultimate heels of wrestling, and what he says about Chris Benoit.
At a later date, I'll be quite happy to sit here and tell you all the things about Chris Benoit that I'd like to tell you. But now all I'm willing to say is that Chris Benoit was undoubtedly the hardest working man in professional wrestling, the most dedicated and totally absorbed in the business of professional wrestling about anybody I've ever met. And that's all I've really got to say at the moment. He was the absolute best. Thanks.
And at that, he's the only of the WWE stars who then, right after he gave that speech, he got up and walked off camera. And for me, it was very, if you saw it, thinking like, he wasn't emotional. He was very, very cold, very, very cool. And all I'm prepared to say is this, because he knew exactly what had gone on. He knew Chris Benoit. And it's one of those moments in time when you kind of go, maybe when we're giving tributes to people who just died, we should be very, very careful. I'll give you a quick example. Andy Mack was telling me about a tribute written about Boris Johnson, that because he was in intensive care, and you have to write a tribute like if he passed away or if he was going to die. And the one that was written by someone in, Russia Today, that I heard from you, it was just like, it was terrible. It was kind of laughing about him. Like, ha, ha, ha. Like, you say that you're not afraid of coronavirus and then you die of it. Ha, ha, ha. Like, this kind of sneering kind of element. William Regal, for me, that was great. The way he just said it, like, and when you see the video in his face, it was like, oh, very, very cool. I mean, because usually WWE is over the top, because when Chris Benoit was remembering Eddie Guerrero, he was crying. He couldn't stop crying live. Did Eddie Guerrero, did he commit suicide as well, Alex?
I'm not entirely sure what the cause. I know that his death was premature, certainly. I'm not entirely sure on the cause. But yeah, like as you were saying, like when all those guys come out, when you have William Regal coming out and saying all this, and like what the typical WWE talk, like it's easy to forget that these are real people. They have real relationships with other wrestlers, and the fact that he's like a heel in real life, and when obviously like whenever they have something like this on WWE, when they come out and talk as themselves, not as their characters, like it's always something to watch for sure.
Yeah,
because most of these people aren't even anywhere near like the way they are on TV. And it's not really the same with the UFC, because or boxing, because fighters, they will say something to sell their match, but like they're not playing characters, they're there as themselves. So that's
it seems that Guerrero, he died of like I guess a heart attack, but it seemed to have been brought on by heavy steroid use. That's what they came to, because himself and Benoit, they came together they used to wrestle in Japan, and then they came together into the
right.
And so on. Right. What's the guy? He was a big guy, Perry Saturn, wasn't it?
I'm not aware.
He's a huge big guy. I think Sable used to be his manager, and Dean Makarenko as well. Remember him?
I do not.
No, okay.
None of these. No, but yeah. But yeah, this comes from the same sort of like dark side of the ring, because he said that Chris Benoit was the hardest working guy. You had guys like Chris Guerrero like Eddie Guerrero, dying from prematurely from all that strain on their bodies. They're as we talked before, like their medical insurance just sucks, and they have they keep working we've had the Undertaker, who only retired like last year, I think, and he's been there like well before my time. He's been there since the 80s. Like,
no, I remember him. I remember like
the Undertaker, right?
Yeah.
Well, thankfully he's okay, but that's
okay. So again, we will wrap up on that, I guess, because we've got to go away for time. So okay, I'll do it. I'll close it then. I'll say just thank you very, very much. Oh no, you do the thanks. It's your show. Go on, you do the thanks.
All right. Well, gentlemen, both of you, thank you very much for coming on to our show. Alan, have a great week, and stay safe.
I will. We have big lockdown in Moscow tomorrow, but I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to still have to work, but
do you need a permit in Moscow to leave your house? Sorry.
Yeah, that's basically
really?
It. Yeah, if you go to a different rayon or region of the city, district of the city, and on Tuesday we have like the election. Well, we have elections in the university. So I have to get a special pass to go vote. So it's kind of it's very Russian. Like, you need a special permission to go.
How do you get the pass? Don't you need to leave the house to get the pass though? That's sort of what. All right. Well,
it's Russia, baby. It's Russia.
It is. All right, Andrew. Thank you very much for coming on to my show. It's always a pleasure to have your football expertise. And yeah. Thank you, and stay safe. Stay safe in Siberia.
Well, ISB, thank you for holding such a slick show. It makes a pleasant change after Alan's completely haphazard shows. Just kidding. Great
the
stuff.
Worst.
Just kidding.
Listen, something needed to be changed, and they heard us, and we got a text in between the two shows. So this is going to be well. All right. That's all the time we had. So thank you, everybody, and have a great week.
Thank you.